The cowboy lost his horse, but the next day the horse returned with an Apache woman on its back. The sun had just begun to rise over the wide open plains, painting the sky in shades of soft orange and gold. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of wild grass and the earthy smell of the land. On this quiet morning, a lone cowboy was already awake. He moved slowly, stretching his tired muscles from the long day before, and looked around the small wooden fence that enclosed his modest yard. The world seemed calm, peaceful, and yet something in the air felt different, almost uneasy. His horse, a strong and loyal companion named Thunder, was nowhere in sight. The cowboy's stomach tightened with worry. Thunder had never wandered off before. The horse was more than an animal. He was a friend, a helper, a silent partner in every part of the cowboy's life. Together they had ridden across harsh deserts, steep hills, and endless fields. The horse knew the cowboy better than anyone else did, sensing his moods, calming him when he was tense, and always ready to respond to a command. Losing Thunder, even for a moment, felt like losing a piece of himself. The cowboy stepped out of his small cabin and called the horse's name, his voice echoing across the plains. Rask. "Thunder! Here, boy!" He listened, straining his ears, but the only sounds were the soft rustle of the grass and the distant call of a bird. The horse did not answer. His worry grew heavier with each passing second. He ran to the fence and looked in every direction, scanning the horizon. Nothing. Not a sign of Thunder. He remembered the night before. Thunder had been restless, pacing in his stall, snorting at the wind. The cowboy had thought the horse was simply anxious, maybe sensing the weather change or some distant sound he could not hear. He had tried to soothe him, patting his strong neck and whispering softly. But Thunder had not calmed down completely. And now the horse was gone. The cowboy's mind raced. Was Thunder hurt? Did someone take him? Or had he just wandered off and gotten lost in the vast plains? The cowboy quickly grabbed his worn leather hat and walked toward the edge of his property. His boots sank slightly into the soft ground as he moved, leaving deep impressions behind. He felt the weight of the day pressing on him already, though the sun was just climbing. Every direction seemed the same, the endless plains stretching out like a golden sea. He began to walk, calling the horse's name again, hoping that Thunder would hear him and come running. As he walked, the cowboy thought about all the times Thunder had saved him. There had been storms when the wind howled like a wild animal and the rain fell so hard that it cut the skin. Thunder had never panicked, never left the cowboy alone. Even when a wild coyote or a rattlesnake had appeared, the horse had stayed calm and carried the cowboy away from danger. He had faced long days under the scorching sun, climbing hills and crossing rivers, and Thunder had been his loyal companion every step of the way. Losing him now felt unbearable. Hours passed, and the cowboy continued his search. He followed faint tracks in the dirt, hoping they were Thunder's, but each time he thought he was close, the tracks would disappear or lead nowhere. He stopped near a small creek, knelt down, and inspected the ground carefully. He recognized the shape of hoof prints immediately. They were fresh, but the direction was strange. They didn't lead away from the plains, but circled in a way that confused him. The cowboy frowned. How could Thunder have wandered in circles? He tried to think, recalling every journey they had ever taken together. Thunder had always been smart, alert, and careful. He would not get lost easily. Something was not right. The cowboy's worry began to turn into fear. Maybe Thunder had been stolen. He remembered a story a neighbor had told him about a thief who had taken horses from nearby ranches. The thought made his chest tighten. He could not let that happen. Thunder was part of his life, in a way no one else could understand. The cowboy remembered running through a storm months ago when a wild bull had charged at him, and how thunder had carried him to safety. He could not imagine life without that horse. Determined to find him, the cowboy mounted another horse he kept for emergencies, a smaller and younger animal named Dusty. It wasn't as strong or as reliable as Thunder, but it could help him search faster. He guided Dusty across the open plains, eyes scanning every inch for a glimpse of his lost companion. He shouted Thunder's name, hoping the horse would hear the familiar call and respond. The wind carried his voice, but still there was no answer. As the day went on, the sun climbed higher, beating down on the cowboy's back. Sweat ran down his face, but he did not stop. He moved across hills and valleys, through patches of dense grass and over small streams. Every sound made him pause, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a bird. Could it be thunder nearby? Narration. He approached each sound cautiously, searching, listening, hoping. By the time the afternoon sun began to tilt toward the horizon, the cowboy felt exhausted. His arms ached, his legs were sore, and his mind was tired from constant worry. He stopped on top of a small hill and looked around. The plains stretched endlessly before him, glowing in golden light. He sat down for a moment, leaning on Dusty's strong back, and let out a deep sigh. He felt a mix of fear, sadness, and helplessness. How could a horse just disappear like this? He had searched every nearby area, and still, there was no sign of Thunder. As the cowboy sat there, he thought about his life on the plains. It had always been a life of hard work, long days, and constant challenges. He had learned to be self-reliant, to depend on no one but himself and his horse. Thunder had always been more than a horse. He had been a friend, a source of comfort and support. The thought of losing him forever was unbearable. He closed his eyes and silently prayed that his companion would return. Night began to fall, and the cowboy reluctantly decided to head back to his cabin. He could not continue searching in the dark safely. Dusty followed quietly, sensing the cowboy's mood. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the sounds of the plains at night. Distant howls, the rustle of small animals, and the soft murmur of the creek. The cowboy felt alone, yet he held on to hope. Thunder had always been clever and strong, but he would find his way back somehow. The thought gave him a small measure of comfort. Back at the cabin, the cowboy fed Dusty and settled by the fire, staring into the flickering flames. The evening air was cool, and he wrapped a worn blanket around his shoulders. He thought of every moment he had shared with Thunder, riding through storms, resting under the sun, sharing quiet nights beside the fire. His heart ached with longing, but he refused to give up hope. But Tusterus tossed around. The plains were vast and dangerous, but Thunder was strong and intelligent. Somehow he would return. The night passed slowly. The cowboy stayed awake for hours, listening to every sound, hoping for a familiar hoofbeat or a soft narration. He thought of his own childhood when he had first learned to ride, and how he had always dreamed of having a horse that could be his partner in every adventure. Thunder had become that dream, and now the cowboy's only thought was bringing him back safely. As the first light of dawn began to appear on the horizon, the cowboy stepped outside once more. The sky was painted with soft shades of pink and gold, and the air smelled fresh and clean. He scanned the plains, searching desperately for any movement. He called Thunder's name softly, almost afraid to hope. Then, in the distance, he thought he saw a shadow moving. His heart leaped. Could it be? Could it finally be Thunder? He squinted, trying to make out the shape against the early morning light. Psst. The shadow grew closer, and the cowboy's heart pounded. His mind raced with a mixture of fear, hope, and disbelief. He could barely breathe as he strained to see. Every second felt like an eternity. Grace. Then the shape became clearer. It was a horse. His horse. His beloved Thunder. Relief and joy surged through him, but something about the shape made him pause. He could not believe what he was seeing. The cowboy stood frozen, staring across the plains. Thunder was coming home, yes, but he was not alone. Breaths. Something unusual rode on his back. And as the horse drew nearer, the cowboy could see the figure more clearly. A woman, calm and steady, sitting astride his horse, her eyes scanning the plains around them. The cowboy could hardly comprehend what he was seeing. For a moment, everything felt still. The plains, the wind, the rising sun, it all seemed suspended in time. The cowboy's mind tried to make sense of it. Who was she? How did she come to be riding Thunder? Why had the horse returned this way? He took a cautious step forward, unsure of what to do, yet unable to tear his eyes away from the sight. The horse approached steadily, confident and strong, as if it had a purpose. The cowboy's heart raced. He knew this was no ordinary encounter. Something extraordinary had happened overnight, something beyond his understanding. He felt a mix of awe, curiosity, and concern. This was not just the return of his horse. It was the beginning of a story he could never have imagined. The cowboy's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. Thunder, his loyal horse, was returning, yes, but the sight on its back left him frozen. A woman sat there, quiet, calm, and steady, her dark hair glinting in the first rays of the morning sun. Breath. She wore a simple yet distinctive outfit, unlike anything the cowboy had ever seen. Clearly the clothing of an Apache woman. Her eyes, dark and sharp, scanned the plains, taking in every detail, and for a moment it felt as though they could see straight through him. The cowboy's mind raced. Who was she? How had she come to be riding Thunder? His horse, his companion, had never been separated from him for long, and now, not only had he returned, but he had brought someone with him. The sight filled the cowboy with awe and a strange, cautious wonder. He took a slow step forward, unsure if he should call out, "Approach," or wait. Thunder trotted closer, steady and strong. The woman did not move abruptly or make any sudden gestures. She seemed comfortable on the horse, sitting as if she had been riding her whole life. Her presence was calm, almost commanding, and the cowboy felt a mix of curiosity and respect. There was no fear in her, no desperation, only a quiet strength that made the cowboy realize this was no ordinary encounter. Finally, he spoke, his voice careful but filled with emotion. Who are you?" His voice sounded strange even to him, a mixture of awe and disbelief. Thunder nickered softly as if sensing his rider's concern, and the woman finally turned her gaze toward him. For the first time she acknowledged him fully, and the cowboy noticed a flicker of recognition in her eyes, though it was subtle. "I am called Ahuli," she said softly, her voice steady but melodic. It was not a language the cowboy fully understood, but the tone and calm authority behind it made him feel she was trustworthy. She gestured with her hand toward herself and then toward Thunder, as if explaining the strange journey that had brought them here. The cowboy swallowed hard. He had no idea how to respond. He wanted answers, explanations, something that made sense, but the situation was too extraordinary. Instead, he took another cautious step forward. You came with my horse?" he asked, unable to hide the surprise in his voice. Thunder shifted slightly beneath Ahuli, but she made no sudden move. She seemed patient, waiting for him to understand. The plains were quiet except for the soft sound of thunder's hooves and the distant call of a bird. The early morning light painted the land in golden hues, and the wind carried a gentle chill breath. Everything about the moment felt surreal, as though time itself had slowed. The cowboy could hardly breathe, caught between relief at seeing his horse safe and the overwhelming curiosity about this mysterious woman. Happened. Finally, Ahuli dismounted gracefully, landing lightly on the ground. She moved with the ease and confidence of someone who had traveled long distances and survived the harshness of the land. Her eyes remained alert, scanning the horizon as she approached the cowboy slowly, making no sudden movements that might startle him or the horse. Thunder nickered again, lowering his head slightly, and the cowboy noticed the trust between the horse and this woman. Clearly, something remarkable had happened. The cowboy took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. Narration. "Are you hurt?" he asked finally. He wanted to offer help. Food, water, anything that might ease her journey. Ahuli shook her head gently, a small smile forming at the corner of her lips. She pointed toward the plains behind her, and the cowboy realized she was indicating that her journey had been long, difficult, and perhaps dangerous. He nodded slowly, understanding her gesture. "You must be tired," he said. "Come, rest at my cabin. You can eat, drink, and catch your breath." He did not know what else to say. There were so many questions he wanted to ask, but for now he could only offer hospitality. Ahuli's gaze softened slightly, and she followed him without hesitation, leading Thunder behind her. As they walked, the cowboy studied her carefully. Her clothes were simple but clearly made for travel, strong leather and cloth that could withstand the rigors of the land. Her boots were worn but sturdy, showing she had walked or ridden many miles. She carried nothing else with her, which made the cowboy even more curious about her story. How had she ended up here? What had brought her so far into his territory? And how had Thunder found her? The cabin was small but warm, with a fire already dying in the hearth. The cowboy quickly rekindled it, and the scent of burning wood filled the air.
He led Ahuli inside and gestured for her to sit.
She remained standing for a moment, scanning the room, then slowly lowered herself onto a simple wooden chair. The cowboy noticed the way she moved, every action precise, calm, and deliberate. He admired her strength, even without understanding her words. He fetched a bowl of water and placed it in front of her. Ahuli dipped her hands carefully into the water and drank, her eyes never leaving the cowboy. There was a quiet tension in the room, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and the unspoken acknowledgement that something extraordinary had brought them together. Thunder stood just outside, stamping his hooves and nuzzling the cowboy's shoulder as if to reassure him that everything was all right. The cowboy sat down across from her, still unsure how to begin. Finally, he said, "I don't know how you came to be on my horse, but I'm glad you're safe. You must have a story."
"Maybe you can tell me."
Ahuli looked at him carefully, then slowly nodded. She reached into a small pouch she carried, pulling out a piece of dried meat. She offered it to the cowboy first, a gesture of trust. Surprised, he accepted it, breaking it into pieces and eating slowly. Ahuli then took a small cloth from her bag and began pointing at various places on the plains, tracing paths with her finger as if mapping a journey. The cowboy realized she was trying to explain how she had traveled, how she had survived, and perhaps how Thunder had found her. He listened intently, piecing together her gestures, the tone of her voice, and the expressions on her face. Slowly, a picture began to form. Ahuli had been traveling alone, fleeing danger from a distant place. She had survived harsh weather, difficult terrain, and the uncertainty of the open plains. At some point, Thunder had appeared nearby, perhaps sensing her need or following some instinct. The horse had approached her, allowing her to ride, and together they had traveled back to the cowboys' land. It was an incredible story, one that left the cowboy amazed at the intelligence and loyalty of his horse, and at the courage of this young woman. The cowboy leaned back, letting out a long breath. He felt a mixture of relief, wonder, and curiosity. This encounter was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had faced storms, wild animals, and dangerous trails, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. A mysterious traveler riding his horse, appearing on his land as if guided by fate. He offered her food, a simple meal of bread and dried meat, which she accepted quietly. They ate together, the silence comfortable, each taking time to observe the other. The cowboy noticed the way she handled everything with care and skill, from eating to arranging her small belongings. There was a quiet confidence in her, a sense of calm that was rare and remarkable. After eating, Ahuli gestured toward Thunder again. The cowboy nodded, understanding her unspoken request. She wanted to care for the horse, to show her gratitude for his loyalty and the role he had played in her survival. She approached Thunder slowly, speaking to him softly, in a language the cowboy did not understand. The horse responded, lowering his head and nuzzling her hand, showing the bond they had formed over the journey. The cowboy watched, amazed. It was as if Thunder had recognized her as a companion, a friend, someone he had found and protected. The morning turned to afternoon, and the sun climbed high into the sky. The cowboy and Ahuli spent the time together, working quietly around the cabin and caring for Thunder. She helped him groom the horse, brushing his coat and checking his hooves. Every movement was careful, deliberate, showing her experience and respect for the animal. The cowboy felt a growing admiration for her, not only for her courage but for her kindness and calm strength. As the day went on, the cowboy realized that this encounter might change his life in ways he could not yet understand. He had always lived a solitary life, relying only on himself and his horse. But now, this remarkable woman had appeared, bringing with her a story of survival, courage, and unexpected connection. He felt a deep sense of respect and gratitude for her presence, and a quiet wonder about what the future might hold. By evening, the sky had turned to deep shades of orange and pink, and the plains seemed to glow in the fading light. Ahuli sat quietly by the cabin, watching the horizon. Thunder stood nearby, calm and relaxed. The cowboy joined her, feeling a sense of peace he had not known since the horse had disappeared. He realized that this day, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, had turned into something extraordinary. The bond between humans and animals, the courage of a traveler, and the loyalty of a horse had come together to create a moment he would never forget. As night fell, the cowboy built a small fire outside, and they all sat together, man, woman, and horse. The stars began to appear in the clear night sky, twinkling like distant fires. The cowboy felt a quiet sense of hope and connection. He did not yet know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew that this encounter was special, a meeting guided by something greater than chance. Thunder shifted his weight and nuzzled the cowboy gently, as if to remind him that everything was all right. Ahuli looked at the horse, then at the cowboy and gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. In that moment, the cowboy understood something profound. The plains, the wind, the horse, and this remarkable woman had all come together for a reason. And tomorrow the story would continue, revealing the next chapter of this incredible journey. The next morning the plains were quiet, bathed in soft golden sunlight. The air carried a fresh scent, a mix of dew and wild grass, and the cowboy woke with a strange mix of anticipation and curiosity. Overnight, Ahuli had slept calmly near the cabin, while Thunder had stayed close, grazing peacefully. Now, as the cowboy stepped outside, he saw her sitting on a flat rock, gazing at the horizon. She looked calm, yet there was a story behind her eyes that begged to be told. The cowboy approached slowly, careful not to startle her or the horse. "Ahuli," he said gently, "I want to understand. I want to know how you came to be here, riding Thunder." His voice was calm, but his eyes reflected his eagerness. Ahuli turned her gaze toward him, her eyes steady and quiet. She did not speak immediately. Instead, she motioned for him to sit beside her. He obeyed, settling on the dry grass. Thunder stood nearby, his ears flicking toward every sound, as if he understood that something important was about to unfold. The cowboy watched Ahuli closely. Her movements were deliberate, yet graceful, and there was a quiet intensity in the way she held herself. He could sense that her story would be extraordinary, and he felt a mixture of excitement and respect. "Free." Finally, Ahuli spoke, her voice calm but carrying the weight of her journey.
"I come from the mountains far to the south," she began.
"My people, my family, they are strong, proud, and free. But danger came to us. Others sought to take what was ours, and I had to leave to survive."
She gestured with her hands as if tracing the path she had traveled.
Her dark eyes met his, and the cowboy felt the gravity of her words.
She continued, explaining how she had traveled alone for many days, facing harsh weather, treacherous terrain, and the constant fear of being discovered.
Breath. The plains were open and dangerous, with predators both human and wild, but she had relied on her instincts, her courage, and her determination to keep moving forward.
Every day had been a challenge, but she had survived.
The cowboy listened intently, imagining the miles she must have traveled and the obstacles she had faced. He felt admiration growing within him, not only for her bravery, but for the calm strength she carried despite all the hardships. Thunder shifted his weight, nuzzling the cowboy's shoulder gently, as if sensing the silent respect forming between them. Ahuli paused for a moment, letting the silence settle before continuing. "One evening, near a small river, I saw your horse," she said. "He was alone, yet he seemed to know me, as if he understood I needed help. He approached quietly, without fear, and allowed me to ride him. Together we traveled. He led me through the plains, guiding me to safety." Her words carried a quiet wonder, as if even she could not fully comprehend the intelligence and loyalty of the horse. The cowboy's eyes widened. Thunder, standing nearby, flicked his ears as if acknowledging the story. The bond between horse and rider had been extraordinary, a connection beyond explanation. The cowboy realized that Thunder had not only returned to him, but had guided someone in need to safety. He felt a deep sense of gratitude, not only for the horse, but for the journey that had brought Ahuli to him. He reached out to touch Thunder's mane gently. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he murmured. Thunder responded with a soft nicker, lowering his head as if proud of his role in the journey. The cowboy turned to Ahuli, seeing the quiet smile on her face, the hint of relief that she had made it safely to his land. She had survived, and somehow Thunder had guided her to him, breaking. Ahuli then spoke of the challenges she had faced during her journey. She had encountered harsh storms that tore through the plains, wild animals that prowled near the edges of rivers, and nights so cold that she could hardly sleep. She had survived on little food and water, using every ounce of her skill and knowledge of the land. Every step had been dangerous, yet she had pressed forward, relying on courage and the hope of finding safety. The cowboy felt a mix of awe and humility. He had always thought of the plains as harsh and demanding, but hearing Ahuli's story made him realize the true meaning of resilience. Her courage and determination were extraordinary, and he felt honored to be the one who now offered her rest, food, and protection. He understood that this encounter was not just chance. It was a meeting of strength, trust, and fate. As the morning wore on, they shared a simple breakfast of bread, dried meat, and water. The cowboy observed Ahuli closely, noticing the careful way she handled the food, the respect she showed for each small action. It reminded him of the discipline and skill that had allowed her to survive the journey. They spoke little, but the silence was comfortable, filled with understanding and mutual respect. After eating, the cowboy suggested they tend to Thunder together. Ahuli agreed, moving with ease and confidence as she approached the horse. She brushed his coat carefully, checked his hooves, and spoke to him in soft, soothing tones. The cowboy watched in admiration. It was clear that the bond between Ahuli and Thunder had grown strong during their journey. The horse responded to her calmly, trusting her completely. "Thank you," the cowboy said quietly, realizing that this woman had risked everything and that his horse had played a vital role in her survival.
Ahuli looked at him and her expression softened, acknowledging his words with a small respectful nod.
There was a shared understanding between them, a recognition that this day, this moment, was extraordinary. The afternoon passed slowly, with the sun climbing higher in the sky. They worked together, tending to the small cabin and preparing firewood. Ahuli shared small stories of her people, describing the beauty of her home in the mountains, the strength of her family, and the traditions that had shaped her life. The cowboy listened eagerly, fascinated by the glimpses of a world he had never known. He felt a growing admiration for her knowledge, her skill, and the quiet dignity with which she carried herself. As they worked, the cowboy realized that their bond was deepening. It was not just a connection of gratitude or necessity. It was a bond of mutual respect and understanding. Desper, he admired her courage and resourcefulness, and she in turn seemed to trust him as someone who could offer protection and companionship. Thunder moved between them, his presence a constant reminder of the journey that had brought them together. In the late afternoon, they took a break, sitting together on the grass. Ahuli picked up a small stick and began drawing shapes in the dirt, explaining in gestures the paths she had taken, the rivers she had crossed, and the nights she had spent under the stars. The cowboy watched closely, piecing together her journey, amazed at the distances she had traveled and the dangers she had faced. Every detail made him respect her even more. Bet. Thunder grazed nearby, his ears flicking occasionally as he watched the two humans. The horse seemed content, sensing the calm and trust that now existed between them. The cowboy reached out and patted Thunder's neck, feeling a deep connection not only to the horse, but to Ahuli, who had shared in the journey. He realized that this day had brought more than relief and safety. It had brought understanding, respect, and the beginning of a bond that might last a lifetime. As evening approached, the sky painted itself in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The plains seemed to glow under the fading light, and the air grew cooler. They sat quietly, watching the sun dip below the horizon, feeling the calm and peace of the moment. The cowboy felt a deep sense of gratitude for his horse, for Ahuli, and for the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them together.
Ahuli spoke softly, gesturing toward the distant mountains.
She told the cowboy about her hopes, the dreams she still carried despite the dangers she had faced. The cowboy listened carefully, realizing that this woman's strength was matched by her wisdom and her courage. She had survived alone in the wild, guided by instinct, determination, and the unexpected loyalty of a horse. The cowboy felt a quiet admiration growing within him. He had faced many challenges in his life, but none had been as profound as witnessing the courage of another human being who had survived against the odds. He realized that Ahuli's journey was more than a story of survival. It was a lesson in trust, perseverance, and the power of connection between humans and animals. As night fell, they built a small fire outside the cabin. Thunder lay nearby, calm and relaxed, his breathing steady. The cowboy and Ahuli sat together, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear night sky. The plains were quiet except for the crackling of the fire and the soft rustle of the grass in the wind. There was a sense of peace, understanding, and mutual respect that filled the space between them. The cowboy spoke quietly, almost to himself. "I never imagined that a day like this could happen," he said.
Your courage! It's remarkable.
And Thunder? He's more than a horse.
"He's a friend, a guide, and somehow he brought you to me." "Ah," Uli nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. She reached out and patted Thunder gently, her expression one of quiet gratitude and trust. They sat in silence for a while, letting the moment settle. The cowboy felt a deep sense of connection, not only to Thunder but to Ahuli, who had shared her story and her journey. He realized that this encounter had changed him, opening his heart to the strength, courage, and resilience of another human being. He felt a sense of hope for the future, knowing that the bond they had begun to form would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The night grew darker, and the air cooled further. They moved inside the cabin, preparing simple bedding for the night. Ahuli settled comfortably, and Thunder lay down nearby, his head resting on the ground. The cowboy looked at them both, feeling a quiet sense of gratitude and awe. This day, which had begun with danger, uncertainty, and fear, had transformed into something extraordinary, a story of survival, trust, and the beginning of a unique friendship. Before drifting off to sleep, the cowboy thought about the journey that had brought them together. He thought about the plains, the wind, the challenges, and the quiet moments of courage that had defined Ahuli's path. He realized that life on the plains was full of surprises, and sometimes those surprises could bring profound connections, lessons in trust, and experiences that would stay with a person forever. And as he finally closed his eyes, he knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and perhaps the next chapter in the story of a cowboy, a brave woman, and a remarkable horse named Thunder. A story that had only just begun. The next morning, the plains were bathed in soft sunlight, the golden glow spreading across the horizon. A gentle breeze moved through the grass, carrying with it the fresh, earthy scent of the land. The cowboy awoke first, stepping outside his small cabin. Thunder was already grazing nearby, his coat shining in the morning light, and Ahuli was sitting on a flat rock, gazing at the distant hills. She had not spoken much since the previous evening, and the cowboy sensed that today would bring important decisions, choices that might change their lives forever. He approached her slowly, careful not to disturb her thoughts. "Oh, Ahuli," he said gently, "you've been through so much. You've traveled far and survived dangers I can't even imagine. Today, you have a choice. You can stay here, safe, with food, shelter, and a horse you can trust. Or you can continue your journey to wherever your path leads." His voice was calm, yet he hoped she would understand the gravity of his words. Ahuli turned her gaze to him. Her dark eyes were steady, thoughtful, and unhurried. She gestured toward the horizon, toward the hills and mountains in the distance. Then she looked at Thunder and the cowboy, her expression quiet but filled with meaning. The cowboy realized she was weighing her options carefully. This was not a simple choice. It was a decision that would shape her future. The cowboy sat down beside her, letting the silence stretch. Thunder shifted his weight, nuzzling gently at the cowboy's shoulder. It was as if the horse understood the moment's importance, sensing that a bond had formed between these three lives, a connection that could not be broken lightly. The cowboy felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. He did not want to pressure her, yet he wished she would stay, recognizing that they could all benefit from the trust and friendship they had built. Huli spoke quietly, her voice calm and measured. "I am grateful," she said slowly, "for your kindness, your shelter, and your trust. You have given me safety I have not known for many days. But my journey, it is not over. By people. My family. I must see them, even if it is difficult. She looked toward the distant mountains, and the cowboy understood that her decision was rooted in duty, love, and responsibility. The cowboy nodded slowly. He understood her reasoning, though it filled him with a quiet sadness. He respected her strength and determination. "I understand," he said softly. "You have been brave, and I respect your path. But know this, you are always welcome here. Thunder and I will be ready whenever you need." His words carried sincerity, and he felt a weight lift from his chest as he spoke them. Ahuli smiled faintly, her expression softening. She reached out and placed a hand gently on Thunder's neck, feeling the horse's strength and loyalty.
"He is extraordinary," she said, her voice filled with quiet wonder.
"But I do not know how he found me. But he guided me through dangers I could not have faced alone. I am grateful to both of you." The cowboy watched her carefully, realizing that the bond between horse and rider had been the key to her survival. But after a moment, Ahuli began preparing to leave. She packed lightly, carrying only the essentials she had brought with her. The cowboy watched, helping when needed, his hands steady but his heart heavy. He knew this farewell was necessary, a part of her journey, but it did not lessen the sense of loss he felt. Thunder nickered softly, sensing the emotions in the air, and the cowboy patted him gently. Before they left, the cowboy spoke again, his voice calm but filled with hope. "Ahuli, remember this. No matter where your journey takes you, you are never truly alone. Trust in yourself, and trust in the bond you share with Thunder. It will guide you." Ahuli's eyes met his, and for a moment the plains seemed to hold their breath. She nodded, acknowledging his words, and the cowboy felt a quiet sense of pride in her courage and wisdom. The journey began. Ahuli mounted Thunder with the same calm confidence she had shown before, and the cowboy followed on Dusty, watching closely as they moved across the plains. Every step of Thunder's hooves seemed deliberate, steady, and strong, as if he understood the importance of this journey. Ahuli guided him with gentle words and soft touches, her skill and experience evident in every movement.
As they traveled, the cowboy observed her carefully.
But she was focused, yet there was a quiet grace in the way she rode. Her eyes scanned the horizon, her mind clearly attentive to the land around her. He realized that her journey was not just physical but emotional, a path of courage, trust, and determination. He felt a deep admiration for her strength and resilience, recognizing that she was someone remarkable, capable of facing any challenge. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. They crossed rivers, climbed gentle hills, and moved through patches of dense grass. The plains stretched endlessly before them, golden and wild, yet beautiful in their quiet majesty. The cowboy felt a sense of connection, not only to Ahuli and Thunder, but to the land itself. He understood that these plains, harsh as they could be, were also a place of opportunity, of growth, and of unexpected encounters. During a brief rest, Ahuli dismounted and stretched her legs. The cowboy offered her water, which she accepted gratefully. He spoke quietly, using gestures and simple words to describe the hardships she had faced during her journey. She had encountered storms, wild animals, and treacherous terrain, yet she had persisted. The cowboy listened carefully, realizing that her courage and resourcefulness were extraordinary. Thunder grazed nearby, his ears flicking occasionally as he watched the two humans. The cowboy felt a deep respect for the horse, understanding that Thunder's loyalty and intelligence had played a crucial role in this story. Without him, Ahuli's journey might have ended differently. He reached out to pat Thunder's neck gently, feeling the bond between them all strengthen with every passing moment.
As the afternoon approached, they paused on a small hill overlooking the vast plains stretching to the horizon.
The sun was warm on their backs, and the wind carried the scent of wild flowers and fresh grass. Ahuli spoke quietly about her hopes for the future, her desire to reunite with her people, and her determination to continue her journey despite the challenges. The cowboy listened, inspired by her resolve and courage. He realized that this encounter had changed him. He had always lived a solitary life, relying on himself and his horse, yet now he felt a connection to another human being that was deep and meaningful. He admired Ahuli's strength, her wisdom, and her ability to face danger with calm determination. He understood that trust and respect were at the heart of every relationship, whether between humans or between humans and animals. As evening approached, they set up a small camp near a stream. Ahuli prepared a simple meal, and the cowboy watched her work with admiration. Every movement was deliberate and careful, showing her experience and skill. They ate together quietly, the silence filled with mutual understanding and respect. Rested nearby, calm and content, sensing the harmony of the moment. After the meal, they sat by the fire, watching the stars appear one by one in the clear night sky. The plains were quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire and the gentle rustle of the grass in the wind. The cowboy spoke softly, reflecting on the extraordinary events of the past days. "I never imagined," he said, "that losing my horse could lead to something so remarkable. You've shown me courage, trust, and the power of friendship." Ahuli nodded, her eyes reflecting the firelight, acknowledging his words with a quiet smile. The night was calm, and the cowboy felt a deep sense of peace. He understood that life on the plains was full of challenges, yet it also offered unexpected opportunities for connection, learning, and growth. Ahuli's journey, guided by Thunder's intelligence and loyalty, had brought them together, forming a bond that would endure beyond this moment. The next morning, they continued their journey, moving steadily across the plains. Ahuli guided Thunder with gentle words and careful touches, her focus unwavering. The cowboy followed closely on Dusty, observing her skill and determination.
Every step of the journey reinforced the trust and understanding between them.
He realized that this was more than a simple act of survival. It was a lesson in courage, resilience, and the importance of connection. As the sun climbed higher, the cowboy noticed a change in Ahuli's demeanor. There was a quiet confidence in her posture, a calm assurance in her movements. She had faced countless dangers, yet she remained composed, determined, and focused. The cowboy admired her strength, understanding that true courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to face it with wisdom and calm. By late afternoon, they reached a small grove near a river, a place of beauty and tranquility. Ahuli paused, looking toward the distant mountains, and the cowboy sensed that she was reflecting on her journey and the choices she had made.
He stayed close, offering silent support, understanding that this moment was significant for her.
Rest. Finally, Ahuli spoke, her voice calm and steady. "I will continue my journey," she said. "But I will not forget you, or the kindness you have shown me. Thunder has guided me safely, and you have offered trust and friendship. I carry both with me." The cowboy nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and sadness. He respected her decision and understood the importance of her path.
As the sun began to set, Ahuli mounted Thunder one last time.
The cowboy watched, feeling a deep sense of connection and gratitude. He realized that life on the plains was unpredictable, full of challenges and surprises, yet it was also filled with opportunities for trust, friendship, and growth. Thunder nickered softly, sensing the importance of the moment, and Ahuli guided him forward, her figure silhouetted against the fading light. The cowboy watched until they disappeared over the horizon, feeling a profound sense of respect for both Ahuli and Thunder. Breath, he knew that their journey had changed him, teaching him the value of courage, resilience, and the bonds that connect humans and animals. The plains were quiet once more, yet the memory of this extraordinary encounter remained, a story of trust, survival, and friendship that would stay with him forever.